Hi, Dave. Thanks for taking the time to have a chat with me today. So you are the selected artist for our Atmospherics Sound Residency, and the residency is responding to the environment in and around Alex Wilkie Nature Reserve. And you are developing an accessible sensory experience that celebrates the local flora and fauna, and also provides a bit of solace and mental well-being through natural sound. First of all, though, I just wanted to chat about sound art in general. So it has a lot of iterations, but I guess I wanted to know what sound art is for you and for your practice.
Yeah, so I guess for me, when I look at sound art, wherever we are within our world, we're always listening to sound, we're always listening to sonic textures. So for me, sound art, it's really about taking that idea and developing sonic experiences for the individual. So I use sound as kind of my main medium to then envelope the individual. So I'm quite fascinated by surround sound or ambisonics and spatial sound. So it's really about taking how the human hears binaural and then surround sound, and then taking that the next step level, the next whatever, you know what I mean. It's like just taking to the next stage and creating an environment for the individual. And I think sound art is a really beautiful medium because it gives us that opportunity to use a sense that humans use every day. And it gives me this really unique opportunity to create a language to then express an idea or a question.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
perfect.
Kind of
So your work combines sound with light, scent, vision, and also has a little bit of like a moody aesthetic, I would say. And a lot of existing connection to nature, forest, water. So what's your process when you're composing a new piece? Do you sort of start with a visual, or do you start with the sound, or with a narrative? So where do you sort of begin when you're doing it? Considering your work is so multi-layered, do you have like a typical sort of starting point when you're composing a new piece?
It's probably an idea, and probably what I'm often, excuse me, seeking to do is to present an idea or a question, and then part of that is then building from out. So for this work, it's about obviously celebrating the natural sounds. So you already have the story there that you're trying to get the sonic textures of the reserve. So it's really looking at the idea. And so for most of my works, and you're right, they can have a lot of emotions behind them, is I try and get a starting idea. So maybe it's a theme. So a lot of my recent work have looked at masculinity and toxic masculinity. So you start with that idea. You say, okay, how can I create an environment where somebody walks in and they're going to be presented with questions or ideas, then they can have their own individual response to that. So it's using the senses. So vision's a really grounding one because people are used to that. So I can use video. If I want to go a little bit more abstract, I can use lighting, and light's all about creating the framework and the structure for people to move within. And then for the scent or the living sculptures, so plants and stuff, it's then about taking that further and then really physically responding and creating a sensory experience for the person. And then the sound is really about filling those gaps. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it's definitely
yeah. And I think you know, when you talk about you know, having that multi-layered approach, you know, visual's very immediate. So you see something, you very quickly interpret, you know, quite often what it's supposed to be. But I think with things like scent and sound in particular, you know, it's you can have your own journey with it. Although there is that guiding narrative, it's open to interpretation a lot more by the listener or the viewer, a lot more than that visual. And that's what I really like about sound or sonic art. So
because I can do a lot of things that will place you in a certain space and will place you in an emotional, I guess, how you're going to respond, but it's really up to your individual response. And particularly with sound, I can just begin to layer and layer and layer, and I might have a really negative response from someone, and I might have a really positive response, and that's the emotional response, and I can guide that. But that's what I really love about sound, is you can create this world. And even my musical practice is taking that even further, because you only have the medium of music then. And so how do you put someone into a listening experience that when they leave that, they've somehow had an emotional response, or they resonate with it? That's an individual level as well. It's really about atmosphere and creating that space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So are you always tuned in to the world around you as far as sound goes? Do you carry recording devices with you, and you might be waiting for your coffee and you're listening for sounds? Are you very aware of sound in general around you in your everyday life?
Yes, very much so. It's sometimes too full on. So sometimes I'm too tuned. I do carry recording devices for me a lot. And one of my isolation rituals has been to actually go out and map sound walks. So I actually consciously go and say, okay, I'm going on a hike today, but I want to consciously find sounds as I move through that walk and just sit with them. And, you know, it could be the rain, it could be some birds having a great old time. But then I'm very tuned in. I mean, my last residency I did overseas, I was working all day in the studio, then going back to the centre of Berlin, and I found my body began to shut down. So I was spending 10 hours hyper listening, and then I'd have to go back to a noisy environment. So I had to actually move out into the suburbs, into a really quiet spot, because my body was reacting so much. And you just have to have that awareness constantly that when you're tuning, and particularly when you're doing the work, I treat it like the same as an actor would with physical theatre. You're putting yourself into a space, in a mental headspace. So you have to be very careful about how you manage that. Particularly as an artist, you begin to become very open to your environment and the emotions around you as well. So it's just managing that.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. So yeah, as we mentioned in the sort of introduction, you are doing the artist in residency with us. So what is it that you hope to achieve as part of your residency with City of Granville?
I think what I'm really excited about is just looking at the reserve, and I've been thinking about this the last few weeks, is often I will seek out environments that are very silent, so they're not going to have any interrupting noise. The challenge of this one will be, it's an oasis within an urban environment. So how do I actually translate the beauty of that reserve? I'll also take into account I'm going to constantly have noise around me. So then I think for this one, what I hope to achieve is more about, instead of a long story that's just one big recording, I'm more looking at how do I rebuild the constant sounds that are going on and recreate that space, and then take it so then it's an accessible tool for people to have a listening experience, and they can begin to hear what the sonic textures of that reserve is. Because there's a lot of sounds you don't listen to. Like, you know, when I'm on the phone to someone at the moment, I begin to hear all the birds in the background and what's happening and where they are. And I'm like, oh, so how's that magpie going back there? And so it's interesting. Like, I just love that. Is like, can you find those little hidden sounds that most people won't hear? And for the realization that that's in the middle of an urban environment, I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah. I agree. So final question. I just wanted to get your opinion and advice on anyone who's interested in sound, wanting to explore the medium further or learn more about it. Do you have any advice for people in those situations?
I mean, record with your phone. I mean, the thing that I love to do is, like, you can get field recorders now for like $100 or less, and they're great. And, you know, go out, and when I started, I had a really cheap recorder, and I just spent hours exploring and finding what was around me and just recording it. And then if you're looking at learning sound and sound design, there's a lot of people out there that you can look. There's Melbourne, there's a couple of great organisations which you've caught me off, I haven't even thought about. I was just thinking about them. There's Mess, which is great in North Melbourne. You can join them and they've got some really good workshops. The Push for younger people is really good and they're constantly doing some workshops as well. I would just look online and try and decide what it is you want to achieve and be gentle about your own learning as well, because it does take time, and I think YouTube's such a beautiful resource and it's free. So if you want to learn about sound and learn about what you want to do, is go and explore and try and learn your own way and don't put pressure on yourself. I mean, you can go and do a sound engineering course, but there's also a lot of stuff you can learn yourself. Yeah. And I think we're in an exciting time where we've got the technology available to us. Mm-hmm. And so it's much more accessible than it used to be. And you can also create your own path and how you want to do it. I mean, there's not many sound engineers out there that do multi-channel sound. So if that's something that interests you, follow that.
Yeah, lovely. No, that's really great. Well, thank you for having a chat with me today. And we can't wait to see what you're going to bring to the residency program, and also broadly to the, because your residency outcomes are a component of the Flora exhibition, which is the broader context of this. So yeah, we can't wait to see what you come up with, and also follow your journey along the way. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.